it's your pal Digital D again. And this week in class, you've talked with your teacher about length. And we've used some words like tall and taller, or short and shorter, or long and longer. So we're going to review some of the vocabulary, and we're going to look at some objects and talk about their length. In lesson 26 of Ready Math, we're using our book to compare length. And again, we're going to focus a lot on some vocabulary like long and longer, short and shorter, tall and taller. So in the book, you might have looked at this picture with your teacher. And when you look at this picture and we talk about comparing the length of objects, right? Sometimes it's easiest when those objects are side by side. For instance, let's look at these two trees right here. We have this green tree that we see right here. I'm going to draw kind of a little box around it. And then we have our red tree. And so because these trees are side by side, it makes it a little bit easier for us to compare their length, all right? And we look at these and we see that it's kind of up and down, what we would call vertical. And so when we talk about vertical objects, it's easier to talk about maybe how tall it is. So this green tree is taller than the red tree. Or the opposite of that is also true. We can use the vocabulary word shorter. So the red tree is shorter than the green tree. All right, so definitely easy to compare when objects are side by side. So let's look at these ball bats down here on the grass. So we have a red bat and a yellow bat. And so these objects are laying flat, all right? We can look at it from an idea of like side to side, or what we call horizontal. So when objects are horizontal and we're comparing the lengths, instead of talking about how tall they are, we might talk about how long they are, all right, the length. So for the red bat and the yellow bat, we want to use those words to compare those two bats. And again, because they're lined up side by side, I can tell that this yellow bat is longer than the red bat. So our vocabulary word we use there is longer. The yellow bat is longer than the red bat. What vocabulary word would you use to describe the red bat? If it's not longer, then it's going to be what? What vocabulary word can we use to describe when something is not as long? That word would be shorter. Yes, the red bat is shorter than the yellow bat. We can also compare some of our flowers here. Again, let's look at maybe our purple and red flower. If I asked you to describe the red flower, you would say the red flower is what than the purple flower? The red flower is, I want to hear you all say it, taller than the purple flower. And again, we're using that vocabulary word tall because we're looking at something that's up and down. We talk about that being vertical. So the red flower is taller than the purple flower. What about looking at these flowers, the yellow and the red one? How would you describe the yellow flowers? The yellow flowers are, let me hear you say that word. I want you to yell it out. The yellow flowers are shorter than the red flower. Excellent. All right. So again, we talk about tall and short when we talk about objects that are going vertically up and down. All right. And then when we talked about the bats, we looked at them horizontally and we said that they were longer. All right. And that was kind of the word we were using, longer or shorter. So we use short with both. We use short with both taller and longer, and then short and shorter are the words we use with both of those comparisons. So let's talk about some things that are maybe a little bit more difficult to compare the length. And that might be, for instance, these park benches. All right, these park benches are not lined up so that we can compare the length. Our trees were side by side, our flowers were side by side, and so were the bats. But our park benches, they're beside each other, but when we're trying to compare the length, we kind of have to look at the length of this one and think about how that compares to the length of this other. We can't line it up like I did here with the bats. All right, so we still can compare the length of those two objects, but it might be a little trickier. So look at the gray bench and look at the brown bench. And now look at the gray bench. I could imagine thinking about these two kids in the park that I could put one, maybe two, three people could sit on this bench. But when I look at the brown bench, maybe only two people could sit there. So when we think about comparing the size of the two benches, which one of those is bigger? Well, the gray bench can hold maybe three people, and the brown bench might only be able to hold two. So we know that the gray bench is bigger. But let's think about that vocabulary word to describe these two benches. If we're going to look at the gray bench, and I say the gray bench is what compared to the brown bench? Well, we're going to use the word longer. I'm going to write that word up here. The word is longer. The gray bench is longer than the brown bench. Right? But what word would I use to describe the brown bench? The brown bench is what compared to the gray bench? Well, it's not longer. It's going to be shorter. And I'm going to write that word up here as well. Shorter. So we use that word short, and then we add that ending shorter. All right, so this one is longer than the brown bench. The brown bench is shorter than the gray bench. All right, so there's all kinds of things here in this picture we can compare the sizes of. There's some different boats. We can see that some of them are taller, some of them are shorter, some of them are longer, and some of them are shorter. We can also look at kind of the buildings in the background and see that this building right here is tall. It might be the tallest building, so it's going to be taller than maybe this building beside it. All right, or we look over here, we see that this building right here is shorter than this building next to it, or even this building over here. So using those words to describe and compare lengths, like tall and taller, short, shorter, long and longer. Let's look at a few more examples, all right? And again, these are side by side, so it makes it a little bit easier for us to compare the length of these objects. So if I ask you to talk about these two flowers, and I said to describe the yellow flower, we would say the yellow flower is what compared to the purple flower? We would use the word shorter. So the yellow flower is shorter, all right? And so I'm going to write that word up here, shorter. But what about the purple one? If we said we're going to talk about the purple flower, it's what? Is it longer? Think about how we describe length. If it's up and down, it's that vertical position, we would think about how tall it is. So this one is taller. So I'm going to write that word up here, taller. And we, again, think about height. We think about how vertical something is, how tall or short it is. Let's look down here at these two kids. We have this girl and this boy, and we talk about their height and compare their height. We would say that the girl is just like this flower up here. She is taller than the boy. But if we're talking about the boy, we'd say he is shorter than the girl. So we use those same vocabulary words with the flowers as we did with the boy and girl. Tall and short. Taller and shorter. Now, our toothpaste and toothbrush are side by side, and they are laying in that horizontal position, so side to side. And so instead of talking about being tall and short, we would say what words? So instead of saying that the toothbrush is taller, we would say the toothbrush is, we're going to use that word, longer. The toothbrush is longer than the toothpaste. If we're going to describe the toothpaste, we're still going to use that same word like we did with the flowers and with the boy and the girl, because the toothpaste is shorter. So if we're comparing length and we're comparing heights of objects, we always use the word shorter to describe the smaller object. So let's look at these two pencils. All right, again, they're kind of side by side. They're kind of at an angle, but we can still kind of compare them the same as we did with the toothbrush and the toothpaste. So which one of these is longer, the red one or the yellow one? That's right, the yellow pencil is longer. And if I was going to describe that red pencil, I would say that it is shorter. All of our comparisons, when we talk about the smaller object, we use that word shorter. Great job, friends. Great job, friends. You've worked hard using that vocabulary to explain and describe length. And that's something you're always going to do forever. When you look at objects, you're going to think about how long or how short or how tall it is. So, great job. Keep up the hard work. Until I see you again, don't forget, keep counting.